In the late morning of May 24th, 2022, a gunman entered Robb Elementary School in Uvalde, Texas, killing 19 grade school students and 2 teachers. In the aftermath, polls showed a clear majority of Americans favored an outright ban on assault weapons and universal background checks. Congress responded with only modest legislation: no assault weapons ban, no universal background check requirement. A majority wanted something, and the government did not deliver it. If public opinion is supposed to drive democratic governance, why didn't it work here? That paradox is exactly what Chapter 6 is about. To solve the Uvalde Paradox, we first have to understand what public opinion actually is. In political science, public opinion does not mean what people think privately. It refers to the politically relevant opinions held by ordinary citizens that they express openly. A view you hold privately is not public opinion. But the moment that view is expressed, when you vote, protest, answer a poll, or write to your senator, it enters the realm of public opinion. Governments can only respond to what they can observe. Public opinion is the signal the public sends outward, the message officials receive, and must decide how to act upon. For most of history, governments guessed at public opinion by reading newspapers, counting crowds, and watching elections. Everything changed in 1936 when George Gallup used a new technique to predict the presidential race. His method: interview a small randomly selected group called the sample to estimate what the whole population thinks. Major newspapers predicted a Landon victory, relying on letters from wealthy Republican subscribers. Gallup drew his sample at random and predicted a Roosevelt landslide. That prediction established scientific polling as the authoritative method for measuring public opinion. What makes a sample of 1,000 people a valid representation of 300 million? The answer is random selection, when every person in a population has an equal chance of being chosen. The resulting sample mirrors the full population's distribution of views. The size of the population matters far less than the randomness of the draw. A sample drawn from a biased list, like the Literary Digest's telephone books, will produce biased results, regardless of how large it is. Random selection is not just a polling technique. It is the statistical foundation that makes public opinion measurable. Module 1 covers everything you need to read a poll intelligently. How does random sampling work? What does a sampling error of plus or minus 3% actually mean? And beyond the headline number, there are 2 more dimensions that matter far more to policymakers. Intensity tells you how strongly people feel about a position. Someone mildly in favor of a policy behaves very differently from someone intensely committed to it. Salience tells you how highly an issue ranks relative to everything else voters care about. Direction, intensity, and salience are the 3 tools that turn a poll into political intelligence. Module 1 builds that toolkit. Module 2 asks where your political opinions come from in the first place. The answer is a lifelong process called political socialization, the cumulative learning experience through which individuals acquire their political beliefs. This process begins before you can vote, before you can drive, and in many cases, before you can read. The family is the most powerful socializing agent because it has a near monopoly on a young child's attention. Most adults who are Republicans or Democrats today became so because their parents were. The reasons they give for their party preference came later, after the preference was already formed. Module 3 examines the lenses through which Americans see politics, what political scientists call frames of reference. 3 major frames organize political thinking. Party identification is your emotional attachment to the Democratic or Republican Party. Political ideology is your general belief about the proper role of government, ranging from economic liberalism to economic conservatism, and from cultural liberalism to cultural conservatism. Group orientations reflect how your religion, income, race, gender, and age shape your political outlook. Together, these frames explain why 2 Americans can look at the same policy and reach opposite conclusions. Module 4 brings everything together with the hardest question in the chapter. How much does public opinion actually influence what government does, And how much does government shape what the public thinks? The answer is more complicated than most people expect. Public opinion rarely commands policy directly. What it does is set the outer boundaries of what officials can safely do without losing their seats. Within those boundaries, officials have room to act as trustees, to frame issues strategically, and to move public opinion toward their own pre-existing goals. Module 4 explains how that balance of power actually works. The concepts in this chapter describe something happening to you right now. The social media platforms you use show content that reinforces what you already believe, making it harder to encounter challenging viewpoints. The cable news in your world selects which facts to emphasize through framing. And when political leaders make speeches, they are often not simply responding to public opinion. They are trying to create it through what political scientists call manufactured consent. These are not abstract concepts. They are the mechanisms shaping how you see the economy, evaluate candidates, and decide what the country needs. By the time you complete Chapter 6, you will have 5 capabilities you did not have before. First, you will be able to define public opinion and explain its 3 dimensions using real examples from the gun control debate. Second, you will be able to analyze how scientific polling works, explain random selection, interpret a sampling error, and identify 5 common sources of polling error. Third, you will be able to explain political socialization and differentiate between primary agents that shape beliefs in childhood and secondary agents that continue shaping them throughout adulthood. The fourth capability, you will be able to identify the major frames of reference through which Americans think politically, including party identification, ideology, and group orientations, and explain how each shapes political opinion. The fifth, you will be able to evaluate the influence and limits of public opinion on policymakers, including the delegate versus trustee debate, manufactured consent, and the boundaries of action. These 5 capabilities are not just academic skills. They are the analytical tools of an informed citizen in a democracy shaped by polls, framing, and partisan identity. Public opinion is not a simple command that officials obey. It is not a perfect reflection of what citizens believe. It is a complex, multi-dimensional signal shaped by how people were raised, what lenses they see through, and how effectively leaders frame choices. By the time you complete this chapter, you will see every public policy debate with new eyes. You will know how to read a poll beyond its headline. You will know why the majority does not always win. Here is your critical thinking challenge. Using all 3 dimensions of public opinion, explain why Congress rarely passes strict gun control despite majority support. The answer is in Module 1.